All it takes is a double click on an email. A re-entry of a forgotten password and username is being monitored now. A malicious code that's laid dormant in your inbox for months awakens. Between 1 and 3 a.m. that morning, the ransomware captures every single backup in your law firm and scrambles its eggs, holds on to one copy, and sends a reply email. Send us money or we destroy the data. What would you do? According to a recent report on cybersecurity, 60% of IT professionals are expecting some kind of attack in the coming year at their organization. And yet, in that same poll, 69% of business owners recognize they are understaffed when it comes to cybersecurity. What if the constant news of data breaches, the constant retreats from companies about privacy, and the constant fear of insecurity around data makes us less inclined to take it seriously, opening us up to further danger? That's what we're talking about today on Lawsome. Data security, ransomware, law firms, and a secure, defensive way forward into the dangerous data-driven future. Ready? Let's go.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by ConsultWebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast that thought ransomware was a specific type of plate, bowl, and utensil you put on the table when kidnappers come for dinner. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in legal marketing and law firm development. I am co-host and celery stalker Jake Sanders, and I'm joined by the peepin' Julius himself, Paul Julius. Paul, what are you doing, man? Are you staying safe on this episode? Do you feel safe about this?
No.
I don't either, man.
I don't feel safe about this at all. I'm scared. It's weird being on the other side of it because usually I'm the one managing the information and putting it to nefarious ends.
Trying to scare people into buying stuff.
Totally. No, this is a good one. I'm excited about this.
Well, tell us what's on the show today.
On the show today, we're talking cybersecurity, ransomware, data recovery with an article from Above the Law. And then we're joined by the cybersecurity good guys, Nathan Little and Christopher Gerg of Gillware, to talk about the digital security issues law firms face. And then we hack through their firewalls with 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The link today is from abovethelaw.com. It's by friend of the pod, an amazing legal tech connoisseur,
Visionary,
author, Nicole Black. It's entitled Lawyers in Cybersecurity in 2019. How does your firm compare? Well, it's got a kind of like ring to it. There's a little nursery rhyme to it. I'll start with this intro paragraph and then we'll tell you what the meat and potatoes is. In 2019, cybersecurity is an issue that is, or should be, on the minds of lawyers in firms, big and small. This is because lawyers have an ethical obligation to preserve the confidentiality of client information. And as lawyers increasingly move their data into digital format, the obligation necessarily shifts to the firm's data stored online. According to the most recent ABA Legal Tech Survey report, the types of security measures used vary greatly from firm to firm. What cybersecurity procedures does your law firm have in place? So, how are people protecting themselves? What are the ways that they're outlining here, Paul?
To kind of sum it up quickly here in my favorite format, a list.
I know, I love it.
Password protect all devices. Physical protections for firm hardware. I would assume that would be such as, locking the door to the server room. Password managers. Honestly, they're so easy to use. I don't know why people don't. Secure computing in the cloud and security assessments. So these are the 5 touch points that you should at least be looking at. And some of them are, literally find LastPass, set it up, problem solved. And we find out later, talking to Christopher and Nathan, that many of the problems they have to unravel and solve and re-engineer and fix are caused by someone not doing that one thing.
Or, yeah, users is really the end. It's not that you failed to put plastic all over your furniture, sort of like at your grandma's house.
Don't be talking about my grandma.
I'm just saying, we're trying to protect the stains.
She gave you cookies, man. That's so mean.
But you think about that, you can take all of these preventative moves, but in the end, it's a user and them not knowing that they should or shouldn't be engaging with something in a certain part of your information structure. It sounds silly because I'm just explaining what the definition is, but people aren't sure how they're vulnerable. And these things happen all day, every day. Yeah, we were going to do an article that was about the ransomware that attacked Georgia's administrative office of the courts. So everybody who needed to get into court or had a case pending, they said only courts who use applications hosted by our network might experience some delay. They said it's not important. It's only affected certain people who are dealing with case management, which is everybody. I don't know how it's interesting how they phrase that. And right a paragraph down is July 2nd in Rivera Beach, Florida. Someone transferred $600,000 worth of Bitcoin to get their government agency records, all their stuff back. Yeah. And that's happening small little places, large places, everywhere. And what we find out later is these attacks aren't necessarily nefarious and sort of dark cephalopod.
Evil genius super mega attacks.
You can buy these kits off the dark web for $500. They show you how to set it up. You put it in some email stream, and Karen or Dan, are just clicking around. It doesn't matter. It's a small thing to get a large sum. Staying conscious, being aware of this. Nicole Black is an amazing voice in this space because she just wants people to be aware of it. We find out later that the hourly billing, the way lawyers bill is a direct threat that makes ransomware so attractive because they know you need it. They know you need your data back because you're not going to be able to. That scared me.
Yeah, that was incredibly eye-opening. I mean, any firm who processes things through, wire transfer or ACH, you need to listen to this interview with these guys because this, the way they just kind of matter of fact unrolled it, I was like, damn.
And it's only because they've responded to the threats, not because they're selling this vitamin paste that you put on or they're selling you a plastic sheet that you put over every computer.
Right. Like my grandma's computer.
Which I'm still not doubting. It's a fine computer. It's very clean. It's overheating, I think, under there. Anyway, I'll end it here with a quote from Nicole. Well, how does your firm compare? Are you doing everything that you can and should be doing to secure your law firm's data and systems? If not, there's no better time than now to increase your firm's security by performing a security audit and establishing additional security procedures for your firm.
Lawson continues. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Any lawyer looking to grow their business online can generate more leads from their website by hiring ConsultWebs. After working with lawyers exclusively since 1999, we've tested thousands of web designs and marketing strategies, so we know what flips and what flops. For more information, visit www.consultwebs.com today.
Let's head over to the interview.
Gillware offers digital forensics, incident response, and e-discovery to businesses ranging from large to small, as well as law firms across the country. Nathan Little is the VP of Digital Forensics and Incident Response. Nathan joined as an engineer writing custom software and has since helped to develop Gillware's proprietary data recovery tools. Christopher Gerg is VP of Cyber Risk Management and a technical lead with over 15 years of information security experience. Chris has worked in numerous roles, building, testing, and breaking into information architecture at high-level corporations. And he's also authored the book Managing Network Security with Snort and IDS tools. And if all that wasn't enough, Chris and Nathan have decided to break into our podcast, give us their data, and record this interview. Chris, Nathan, welcome to Lawsome.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
So explain yourself. What is Gillware? How are you guys bringing, I mean, this is a lot of words here. Digital forensics, incident response. How does that translate to law firms? What do you guys do? And just give us kind of the pitch mode.
We'll give you the background because one thing led to another. So I'll let Nathan start because he really started things off and then I came in. Yeah, so Gillware as a company, we've been around since about the year 2000, providing all sorts of mostly data and tech related services to clients, from data recovery to incident response. And we'll dive a little bit deeper into all the different categories of incident response, data backup, and a wide variety of things. Now, currently, one of our biggest lines of business and our fastest growing service that we're providing to people, especially law firms, because they're particularly susceptible for a number of reasons, is the incident response services, and then therefore the proactive services to prevent things like data breaches, ransomware attacks, and other things. So very, very relevant to law firms. And we certainly have some horror stories of from the small 1 to 2 person law firms that we've worked for to law firms with hundreds of attorneys that we've helped respond to data breaches for and other incidents. And then Christopher leads our proactive side of the business. So we're kind of counterparts on each part of the business. So I'll let him dive into that. And one leads to the other. The company was finding out that kind of in the last conversations they had when an incident response was being wrapped up and recovery was underway, how do we prevent this from happening again? It's nice talking with Nathan and the team, but you only want to talk to them if you run into them on the street, not if you have to, because you've got ransomware machines. And so I was brought in. I've got a background in either running IT departments or being a chief information security officer, running an information security program. And building them from scratch. And so I come in and help organizations lock things down and make sure that their information security program, and it is a program. I mean, you're not going to buy a box of security, plug it into your network, and you're done. It's a program, and it's something that needs care and feeding to maintain a secure environment. So that's what I do. We jokingly call it CISO as a service. Where we come in and do help organizations build or enhance the maturity of their information security program. And then what Christopher's side, the risk management and the information security program, where it stems out of is every case that we see, every hack, every breach, every ransomware, we're collecting information, and we're also collecting information that's generally available to the public. And those programs that Chris develops for clients are designed to prevent the essentially preventable incidents that we see and we investigate, among many other things, to improve overall security from an internal insider threat, malicious employees perspective, and outsider threat. But they work very closely hand in hand, because one thing that's just kind of a fact of the incident response, there's usually one thing where if they would have just done this last month, they wouldn't be in that spot. And that's not one thing to give perfect security, but each incident can usually be prevented at one specific point in the chain of attack if that company wouldn't have made one mistake or would have implemented one more safety check on that system. And that's what Chris's program is designed to do, to avoid when we run into them not doing that one thing. Yeah, it's really giving me the answers to the test before the test.
That kind of leads to number 2 here, which we want to know about data breaches. And they're, I mean, I swear to God, every week there's another one in the news. It seems to be happening very widespread all the time. Do you guys have some insights as to why there seems to be so many data breaches, so many credit card applications stored in plain text that someone is just
Passwords,
able
all
to
of it.
access on a server. Like,
Yeah,
what's up with all
why
this?
aren't people taking this more seriously? Are you guys just like,
I think at the root of it it's I haven't come across an IT department yet that well, I have, but not many IT departments are staffed and funded in the way they need to be, and it goes back to kind of an old way of thinking, where IT is thought of as a cost center, where we've got a website and we've got email, we maybe have internet access at our office, and that's kind of what IT's job is. But there's very few companies out there now that if every one of their machines was unavailable, every computer in the environment was locked up with ransomware, that business wouldn't just completely grind to a halt, or at least start to the point where you were losing money hand over fist. And if that data got compromised and exposed to the public, there's going to be real consequences, either from just a reputation standpoint or from fines if you're covered by regulations like HIPAA or GDPR or something like that. And so a lot of times the organizations are playing what we call whack-a-mole, where, hey, we need to have an antivirus, let's get an antivirus. We need a monitoring tool, let's get a monitoring tool. We need an IDS, let's get an IDS. And each of those things generates logs. Each of those things is a standalone point solution. And there's not a lot of strategy put into your architecture for your technical environment. And so a lot of times when we come into an organization, we kind of take a step back and say, what tools do you have and how can we use them more effectively? A lot of times you have the tools you need, but it's a matter of having that expertise. And I guess it's a long way to answer your question, but the answer to your question, there's not a lot of people that have an information security and risk management mindset. We're working with technical colleges and apprenticeship programs to try to get more people into the industry and get them thinking with that mindset, because it is more of a mindset than it is a skill set, but it's not always obvious what it is you ought to be doing, because you really do need to have the big picture, and people are always standing so close to the trees they don't see the forest.
Think about this. I mean, the forest is on fire and they're thinking, well, why would I even care about dousing my little tree when there's so many data breaches? I mean, it almost makes it seem like it's inescapable. Do you also feel like there's also this, what are you going to do?
It's defeatism. Like what? Yeah.
Do you find that kind of cooked into it? And that's why they just leave? Because I've been into IT closets at law firms and it looks like a spaghetti monster. It's definitely a fire hazard, whatever it is. But they just kind of leave it there because they're like, I'm not even dealing with it, because eventually, we'll just wait until it goes up in flames. Do you think people are kind of like IT nihilism?
It certainly can be an overwhelming task without the right resources to the point where you just don't even approach it, because you don't know how much it's going to cost. It seems like a money pit. But it does seem, from somebody who's not experienced with the information security programs and investigating data breaches and other things, it does seem like, oh gosh, even the huge companies are getting hit. This is just unavoidable. And then a similar thought process is, I'm not a target. I'm only a 20-person law firm, or I'm only a 100-person law firm. I'm not a huge enterprise. But it's simply not true. One of the reasons why you asked, why is this so prevalent? It seems like you hear about a new one every day. Mm-hmm. First of all, we're probably only hearing, we don't know what the exact number is, but there's certainly more happening than we're hearing about, which is the scary thing. But the reason it's so prevalent is because, quite frankly, it's easy. That's not to say that there aren't some extremely advanced hackers and cyber criminals out there, because there certainly are, and there's some of the smartest people in the world, but there's also some of the smartest people in the world defending against them. But the majority of cyber incidents are easy attacks. And some of them are easily preventable, like we already mentioned. But for example, we hear about a lot of the big breaches, and usually it's because something was left publicly available, or some vulnerability from years ago wasn't patched because that system got off the patch management, which just means it wasn't getting updates. So those aren't extremely hard types of attacks, and they're pretty easy to prevent. But the other side of things that it's easy on is, especially in ransomware, the unfortunate fact is it's so easy for these cyber criminals to make money by going to the dark web. And a lot of people don't know this, but going to the dark web, purchasing a ransomware kit for $5 to $5,000, depending on how advanced it is. And they just get instructions on how to deploy it to people and how to infect people, even so much as email templates to send to people. So again, there are some brilliant cyber criminals out there, but really a lot of people can do this make a lot of money.
Does that just make you so mad? I mean, it's just because you're in there, and I'm sorry I have to charge you this much to clean it up because that's what it's worth. This person may have got it for $500, and they're just, So here's a question. You talk about, Chris's work being preventative and your work being responding to incidences. What are some horror stories? Is there a law firm specific one that you guys have? Just to kind of like spark a little bit of, some anxious energy in our audience.
There's a lot of specific examples, and I'll kind of combine a couple so that it's not easily identifiable which incident I'm talking about. But we do 3 types of very common cases for law firms. The first, and maybe even the most common, is business email compromise, often leading to some sort of wire fraud. For example, we had a large law firm client that had just reached a settlement of, I think it was a relatively low settlement. I think it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars range. So a lot of money, but not huge. And the attorney's email box was compromised. So they had several months before clicked a link in their email that was designed to get them to enter their username and password. And then that username and password was sent to some sort of cyber criminal who logged into their email box and put a few things in place to monitor their email box for terms like wire transfer, ACH, funds, things that would commonly be in an email discussing where to transfer money. So they set up alerts, notifications that they get to their phone or their computer for when you're talking about a wire transfer. And when they get that alert, since they've compromised your mailbox and they can see your incoming and outgoing emails, they jump into the middle of the chain. And to not get too technical, they do some really creative things to basically make you feel like you're still communicating with the person you think you were to get the wire transfer set up. And your client, who's about to transfer the money for the settlement, still thinks that they're communicating with you, but the threat actor, the attacker, is actually still continuing both sides of the conversation, and they're rerouting where the money's going to a bank account controlled by them, and then it's immediately transferred to a few other bank accounts, and then it's gone. So that's a very common type of attack that we see law firms fall victim to. And we mentioned it earlier, but at least right now, until the attacks continue to evolve, it's very easily preventable by having multi-factor authentication on your email accounts. But it's very common, and Christopher can speak to this, we will go into a law firm and they still won't have multi-factor authentication enabled on their email accounts or other accounts. And that's kind of if they would have just done that one thing, they would have at least been very well protected against this type of incident.
It also is useful to have a manual mechanism anytime funds are going to get transferred, so that you're not just transacting through email, because you kind of can't trust email even with multi-factor authentication for really sensitive things.
So and so you were saying there's 3 types of incident response. So I love that one, and the answer there is like a manual stopgap in between certain things that you can sort of review So what are the other two types of incident response at law firms that you see that you keep showing up to late at night, getting the call?
Yep. So the other one that's equally common as business email compromise, but typically more disastrous, and almost everybody's heard about it on the news, is ransomware. And most ransomware attacks are opportunistic, but they're getting more targeted. And by opportunistic, I mean they don't really care which business they're infecting. They just try to infect as many people as possible and see who will pay the ransom to get their data back. But we see law firms as a common victim because once an attacker whose goal is to ransom your data and hold it for ransom, once they've gotten into a network, they usually compromise so many networks that they get kind of the pick of the litter, and they'll focus on the biggest companies that they think are most likely to pay the ransom. And they'll hunt around the network, the law firm's network. They'll look for where their backups are stored. They'll look for where the critical servers are stored. And then once they find all that, they'll typically between the hours of 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. Do kind of an orchestrated attack to destroy as much data or encrypt as much data and destroy backups as possible to make it so that your only way of getting your valuable case data, your client data, whatever it may be back is to pay the ransom. And one reason that law firms are a desirable victim for that is because a business that bills hourly, the ransomers know that there's a pretty simple calculation if it's worth paying the ransom or not. If you're not able to bill hours, and that is costing you more than the ransom payment, you're likely going to decide to pay the ransom to get your data back, especially if you have no other option.
Right, that's freaking terrifying.
Oh, that's good. This is so shocking. Okay, what's the other one? Oh, this is just scary.
So those first two are what I would say are the easy money ones, because you're getting either paid for the ransom or you're intercepting a wire transfer, and you have your money immediately as the cyber criminal. The third is one that people very commonly hear about, and that's data breaches, where some system is compromised and data is stolen. And that's a really, really broad category because it can be similar to business email compromised, where data from an email mailbox is stolen, or it can be some sort of web application compromise that's exposed to the internet. That might be a case management system, or if you do an attorney for mergers and acquisitions, you could have extremely valuable data for them to compromise and either sell to other people or maybe reach out to you as the law firm and say, hey, just so you know, we were in your system and we stole this data. We see that this would be very valuable to maybe an opposing counsel or maybe the public if it's harmful to a company's reputation. And they may actually say, if you don't pay us $100,000, $500,000, $2 million, we're going to release this. Or they may compromise a bunch of social security numbers and credit cards and sell them for a couple of dollars each on the dark web. But that's kind of a longer path to profitability for the threat actors because they have to sell them kind of one by one.
So here's a question, Chris. Like in regards to the business email, you said a manual stopgap. What are the two what are your sort of prophylactic steps here for ransomware and data breach? What are your kind of like elevator hot tips? Here's what you need.
Well, apart from just the fundamental things that you ought to be doing, I equate information security maturity with managing your health. I can do a lot of things to improve my health. I can run 3 miles a day. I can eat a lot of granola, drink enough water, get enough sleep, not smoke, drink less, and I can still be walking across the street looking to the right and a dump truck comes from the left. So assuming that you have some of those fundamentals in place, like you're running anti-malware, good antivirus software, you've got things pretty well locked down and patched and updated. The biggest thing that's left dangling, even with a good, strong, mature information security program, is the dump truck of the user sitting at their workstation, where if they double-click an attachment or go to a link that's in a phishing email, a false email, they can still cause a lot of damage. because it'll say, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And naturally, they're going to say, "Yep," and off it goes. So the information security awareness training aspect of it is a big piece of it, because even with a well-funded organization that's got a very disciplined approach to information security can still have trouble if someone double-clicks something, and you can take steps, and part of a good mature information security program will help you have mechanisms in place to contain the extent of a ransomware infection and limit how far to the side it can propagate.
So tech, this is really interesting. You guys are big. You write software. You're all about information architecture, all about IT, all about tech. But you realize that tech isn't the way to solve it. Education, like dealing with the software inside people's heads, is the only real way to make sure. Is that kind of, would you say, am I kind of reaching for something there? Like
Not
it's
the
actually
only real way, because I started off by saying you need to have the fundamentals in place.
Oh yeah, you got something antivirus and it's rolling, and so there is something that you can maybe, but it's an awareness. Really, it's like defensive living is the best way, maybe.
Correct. I mean, it's an important piece and one that commonly falls. Like if you've got a beautiful castle with 50-foot tall walls and these great towers with these incredible, crossbows and ballistas sitting on top of it, and someone is standing there and says, "Could you please drop the drawbridge?" to the guy who's running the drawbridge, and he drops the drawbridge, those walls and crossbows and all the rest of it aren't going to do you any good if the door is open. So there is a meat space aspect to all of this, that people are still involved. And you do need mechanisms in place to help the people be part of the solution. Because the information security ownership, or ownership of information security isn't just the nerds in IT. It's also the people sitting at their desk.
Man, whew. I just feel like I feel like a parade. I feel like I just joined a parade and we're marching down, and I'm like, I got this big banner, and I'm like, be serious about your data, people. Because think about the GDPR and Facebook and everybody gives away their data for a free cheeseburger from Wendy's. Like they're going to look at your photos. They're going to trace they're like, but this is a pretty tasty cheeseburger. Am I right?
Talking about it, if we were talking Five Guys, I'd think about it.
It's a brand centric thing. Okay. And they give you that extra fry there. They know what they're doing there at Five Guys. So, well, let's keep it back on tech stuff. Let's go right to the recovery. You guys started data recovery wise. You guys are focusing more on this information architecture, kind of responding to incidences and setting up preventative networks and steps preventing the next one. Do you guys still do data recovery?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
It still is a big part of Gillware's business, from everything to people's personal laptop drives failing that didn't have backups, recovering from those, to recovering a server that failed during some sort of migration, and for a 5-hour period there was no backup, and it's 200 terabytes or 500 terabytes, and the stars align and data is lost, and we have to reconstruct that RAID and recover the data. So we're still one of the best companies in the world at recovering data, and it's a primary part of our business. It's just that the tech world is evolving, and the incident response, quite frankly, there's just not enough people to do it. And then data recovery, our extremely advanced skills in data recovery help tremendously on the incident response side of things, and also on the forensic investigations, for example, for civil litigation on a malicious employee, because recovering the data, as much data as possible, is kind of the first step to any investigation.
Right.
And also, especially in ransomware attacks, recovering data and getting systems back online is prevalent as well, because people think, oh, I'll just pay the ransom and the data will all come back perfectly fine. It's usually not true. A lot of times the data can be recovered, but sometimes it takes an extremely manual effort, repairing corruption to certain databases. So that's a portion of data recovery that we do as well. So very common still, just not as common as it once was.
I'm curious. It's tough for some of the, maybe solo, small law firms, stuff like that, who, they're stretched thin as it is. Does Gillware offer any kind of like a retainer or like a consulting service or like a subscription or something like that? Is there some way that a law firm could get in touch with you guys and just have like a monthly check-in, or
there's kind of two answers to your question. One
Okay.
is the incident response side of our world absolutely has retainers with customers where you pay for a package of hours. You have a guaranteed SLA, service level agreement with response. If you have an incident, it guarantees the availability of incident response engineers if you have an incident. So absolutely, we have retainers for that sort of thing. And actually, it's getting more and more prevalent as these incident response companies like ours are at capacity and actually don't have the availability to take on more cases because there's so many ransomware infections going on right now. On the other side of things, that's what you describe is exactly the core of what my side of the company does, and that's a proactive information security helping you manage your information security program. We come across a lot of organizations that are, maybe they've got 50 to 200 employees. They've got 2 to 4 IT people, and the IT people are smart, motivated people. And really, what we find them saying is, "Just tell me what to do, and I'll do it." Mm-hmm. And we come in and help them because of our experience in the incident response side, and knowing the answers to the exam before we take the exam. Mm-hmm. We can help prioritize and make sure that those fundamental things are in place. And that the people working there are aware of their role in the information security program. So that what you described is exactly what we do.
Oh, funny that. Well, to put the whole cherry on top of it, if our audience wants to get in touch with you, Nathan, Chris, or Gillware, how do they do that? How can they find you guys on the web?
Yeah, so the easiest way is to probably just go to Gillware.com, and if you click on the incident response services or the proactive services, the risk management services, there's a phone number that can reach us. Alternatively, you can email myself or Christopher directly with any questions. My email is nlittle, that's NLITTLE, at Gillware.com, GILLWARE.com. And I'll let Christopher give his. Yeah, mine's just CGERG at Gillware.com. So CGERG at Gillware.com. But the website's really the easiest way. There's a form on there. No shortage of ways to get in touch with us.
5 questions we ask everyone.
What was the last book you read? Start with Chris.
Christopher.
There's a series of books. There's a series of books from that is now a TV series called The Expanse, and it's the latest novel in the Expanse series.
Nice. Nathan?
To be honest, we're so busy on the IR side of things. I think everything I read is some sort of report that we've written for an incident response case. I can't even remember the last time I read for fun. Yeah. It was probably some sort of technical book, probably written by Christopher.
Immersed. Flows into him like code in the Matrix. All right. Number 2. We'll start with Nathan this time. What is your favorite place?
It's tough to have just one, but I would say one of my, other than the office, which I truly enjoy, one of my favorite places, we're headquartered in Madison, Wisconsin, and in northern Wisconsin, we have a ton of lakes with a ton of cabins. So northern Wisconsin is one of my favorite, most relaxing places.
Nice.
And my answer, without hesitation, is Scotland.
Number 3. What sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with? Christopher first.
I have an entire list. one that I find very valuable is one called Ars Technica, ARS Technica.
Oh yeah.
.com. It's everything from space to video games to nerd stuff to information security stuff. But it's a good place that's where I start my day. I pick up my phone and type ARS and it knows what to do.
And then I have a couple. I read a lot of people's questions and answers, especially as it relates to incident response and security on Quora. And then also spend a lot of time looking at the latest threats, whether it's on the dark web or some of the open threat exchanges out there where people are sharing information.
Yeah. I bet you guys get some weird places, man. All right. Number 4. If you were stranded, oh my God. Number 4. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be? Nathan?
I think probably some sort of mustard, probably honey mustard.
There it is. Christopher?
Sriracha.
Awesome.
Dispassionately.
That's it.
The spiciest.
That's right.
You could put sriracha on a cat turd and it would taste good.
For real, though.
Number 5, and this is the last one. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind? Nathan.
Try to get outside away from a computer, somewhere where I feel like I can't be hacked or at least not noticed if it's happening. No, it's mostly a joke, but something outside is just away from the computer.
Nice. Christopher?
Yeah, same thing for me. I turn off the devices and just go outside, whether it's backpacking or hiking or whatever else.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsonpodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawson.